What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm Ryan Thomas, of course. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the first Buffalo Bills podcast video that I have done since the season came to an end, since the Bills blew it against the Cincinnati Bengals. Yep, there's no other way to put it. The Bills blew it against the Bengals. We know that, right? And a lot of things have happened since then that have rubbed salt into my wounds, right, from that game. Namely, the Kansas City Chiefs winning the Super Bowl. Yeah, I was rooting for Philly the whole way. I wanted Jalen Hurts to throw for a gazillion yards. I wanted Philly's defense to shut down Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Did I have necessarily as much of a rooting interest in the game as I would if the Bills were playing in it? Of course not. But I wanted the Kansas City Chiefs to come up short. Because I clearly know that the Chiefs and the Bengals are now the Bills' new rivals, right? The Chiefs have been the Bills' rivals for the last few years. The rivalry is palpable between Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen, to say the least. And when I look at that Super Bowl, a few days removed from it, I say to myself, what do the Bills need to do to be in that spot? What do the Bills need to do to become the next Super Bowl champion? And I'm flipping through my YouTube, as I tend to do during my downtime. Flipping through the YouTube, checking out the videos that are suggested, subscriptions and things like that. Things that I would enjoy, right? Buffalo Bills sports talk, MMA sports talk, interviews with fighters, players. And of course, you got Kyle Brandt's Basement that was on all season long, where he hosted Josh Allen every Tuesday, I believe, or Thursday. And Josh Allen's on. And it's a true rarity that there has been a scenario or a situation in which Josh Allen has said something that completely frustrates me. Usually anything that Josh Allen says, I can say, that's my guy. There he is. J.A., 17. That's the dude, QB1 of the Buffalo Bills. But this last interview really ticked me off for a few reasons. And mainly I want to discuss those reasons in this podcast. Now, there was a portion of the interview where Josh Allen said that he felt like, the Chiefs are the top dogs in order to beat the best. In order to be the best, you got to beat the best. That's a cliche that's in boxing. It's in mixed martial arts. It's all throughout sports, of course. And it's not just a cliche. It's true. In order to be the best, you got to beat the best. And right now, Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs are the best. It's such a quarterback-driven league that we say, okay, well, whoever won the Super Bowl, that quarterback is obviously on a pedestal as one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Well, Pat Mahomes is not only a Super Bowl champion, he is the best quarterback in the National Football League. So those two things go hand in hand with Mahomes and being the best quarterback and now being a Super Bowl champ. But that Kansas City Chiefs team is very good. It's not just Patrick Mahomes. It's Patrick Mahomes. It's Travis Kelce. It's Isaiah Pacheco. Juju Smith-Schuster had a great clutch season and a lot of moments this season. And Nick Bolton was a great player this year, a great rookie. George Karlaftis, another great rookie. The key phrase within a great organization in the National Football League, or really in any sport where you draft, you have to be able to draft and you have to be able to develop. And the Kansas City Chiefs have been able to draft and develop unlike any other team in the National Football League. And that is not only why the Bills are falling behind against the champs now, the Kansas City Chiefs, but why everybody else is falling behind, because nobody is drafted better. Nobody is drafted and developed better than Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, and now the recently departed former offensive coordinator of the Kansas City Chiefs, Eric Bieniemy, who head-scratchingly took the same position with the Washington Commanders. For the life of me, I'll never understand that. That's one that mystifies me, that I just heard throughout the day today during my work day. But it happened. Eric Bieniemy is gone. The Chiefs will have a new offensive coordinator. More likely than not, it will just be Andy Reid putting somebody in that spot and Andy Reid will be calling the plays. He'll be back again as a play caller, and largely that was what he was doing with Bieniemy anyway, but it'll be now more set in stone with Bieniemy gone. Okay? But Josh Allen in particular, I want to go back on that. I want to circle back to that. Josh Allen in particular stated that in order to be the best, you got to beat the best, and that the Buffalo Bills need to somewhat play copycat to the Kansas City Chiefs. And to be honest with you, I completely disagree with that. And to be honest with you, that statement worries me greatly, that the Bills need to play copycat and do exactly what the Chiefs have done, because to me, you're not necessarily learning anything, you're not necessarily forging your own path, you're just saying that, hey, we need to do what this team tried to do and succeeded doing. It's a lot tougher than that for these NFL teams. It's not that easy. It wasn't that easy. A lot of things needed to happen in order for the Kansas City Chiefs to go to another Super Bowl. It didn't just take a couple moves. It took a wide variety of moves. It took a lot of tough decisions by the Kansas City Chiefs to put themselves in the position that they are now in. And those tough decisions include who they don't have any longer on this roster. Not just who they added, but who they subtracted, who they literally said, so long, bye-bye, trade you, Tyreek Hill. They couldn't pay Tyreek Hill, or they wouldn't pay Tyreek Hill. Either way you look at it, Tyreek Hill was sent packing. The Chiefs said, we're going to choose not to pay this guy because we don't believe he's worth the $25-30 million that another team is going to pay him as a wideout on the wrong side of 30. His game is predicated on speed. So you know as he gets older, he's only going to get slower, not faster. His best football is behind him, not ahead of him. Maybe these next few years in Miami, Tyreek Hill blows up, but beyond that, what could you come to expect from Tyreek Hill? And frankly, the debate could be had, was Tyreek Hill only as good as the quarterback throwing him the ball? He had a good year this year. Despite the fact that he had Tua throwing it to him, he had a decent season this year. Can't take anything away from him, but would he obviously been better in Kansas City? 100%. 100%. He was a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer had he stayed in Kansas City, produced inflated numbers, and won more Super Bowls. That's the type of decision you choose. Money over fame, money over championships, money over immortality as a wide receiver in the National Football League, and that's what you get. A decent season, AFC wildcard round, losing to the Buffalo Bills in Orchard Park with Skylar Thompson throwing you the football. Now, the reason I bring that up is, are the Buffalo Bills as willing to make those types of decisions that Brett Veach and Andy Reid made, where they decided that one of their best players was no longer a fit for the team? Are the Bills willing to make that decision with a guy like Tre'Davious White? Are the Bills willing to make that decision with a guy like Micah Hyde? And I'm throwing these names out there, and I'm offering those names out there to you because Trey White is not the player that he was 2 years ago. Micah Hyde is not the player that he was 2 years ago. Whether we love to hear it, hate to hear it, it's reality. These guys are only getting older, and they're very expensive. And the Bills have one massive problem within their roster, and that is their salary cap situation. Each team has to get to a point at the start of the offseason where they can add to their team, not subtract. We're in a game of competition where each team that was bad last year is going to incrementally get just a little bit better each and every year, especially those teams that have excess amount of salary cap space, namely the Chicago Bears, the New York Jets. Those are the two teams that are coming to my mind right now. We know that each team is going to be trying to get better. We know that each team is going to look very different, and this division in particular could look extremely different given what is in store for it. With what has been laid out for us already, Derek Carr is gone from the Las Vegas Raiders. He is now free to go sign anywhere prior to the new league year starting. There's rumblings he's visiting the Jets already tomorrow. There's rumblings that he'll visit the Saints. There's rumblings that he'll visit the Carolina Panthers, all within the span of the next few days, from tomorrow to Wednesday, or from tomorrow to Tuesday. Derek Carr is going to see three different teams. Well, what does that have to do with the Buffalo Bills? That's what you guys are thinking. What it has to do with the Buffalo Bills is that the AFC East is going to look a lot different one way or another, whether Carr is on the Jets, the Dolphins, maybe even the Patriots. Whether Aaron Rodgers is on the Dolphins or the Patriots or the Jets. Just throwing all these scenarios out there. It's the speculation season. I feel like to say that we're going to copy the Kansas City Chiefs, the only way you can say that we're going to do that is via the draft. We're going to go out, accumulate draft picks, and fill positions of need with affordable young rookie contracts, as all the rookie contracts are pretty affordable, even in comparison, the first round rookie contract from the last few years compared to 10 years ago prior. Sam Bradford's first overall pick salary is a lot more money than, let's just say, Joe Burrow's. Believe it or not, that CBA changed quite a lot in terms of the first round money that these first round picks make. But when you're picking at 27, you're not going to be paying that high of a bonus amount in terms of a bonus on a contract that you would be if you're picking in the top 10 or the top 5. And I'll be the first to say it. My draft strategy, I'm sitting there as Brandon Beane in the war room. It's going to have to take a hell of a lot for one of two things to happen. A player is going to have to slide to Buffalo at 27 that you wouldn't think would be there for you to take, or you're going to have to trade up to get a guy that you want, and in a draft class that's not that great, the options are very limited. In a draft class that is great, the third option would be to trade down and accumulate more picks. But if you accumulate more picks in a weak draft class, yes, you are getting yourself more players out of this draft than what you expected. But are those players going to be ready year one to take the field and make an impact? Let's face it, the Bills need players that are here, ready and now, ready, willing, and able to make an impact. Do they say to themselves, okay, at 27, we're going to trade this pick away for a premier player at a premier skill position, maybe a wide receiver, maybe they go out and they trade the first for multiple players and try to fill as many holes as they can? Because to be honest with you, right now, each starter on the Buffalo Bills from 2022 is a quality starter. Each backup is not quite the best backup. The depth on this team, top to bottom, is pretty thin. We saw that throughout the season as well in the playoffs. So to me, playing copycat to the Chiefs, in what way? What did that mean? I don't know what that meant. Do they mean that we're going to just do everything that they tried to do? We got to forge our own path, guys. That doesn't make any sense to me. I understand just as well as anyone what the Bills need. In my humble opinion, you guys are asking me, what do the Bills need? Nabil Elfol says, what positions do we need? Well, wide receiver, offensive line, safety, corner, D-tackle, potentially another running back, backup quarterback, more offensive linemen, more receivers. You get my point. The positions of need are spread out everywhere because this team needs depth. This team does not have the proper depth that the Kansas City Chiefs have, that the Cincinnati Bengals have, that teams have, that when they're so bad that they're able to pick in the top 5 in every single round like Cincinnati, or when the team as willing as the Chiefs were to part ways with a player like Tyreek Hill, open themselves up to some salary cap, allowing themselves to sign a player like Juju Smith-Schuster on a 1-year deal, allowing themselves to sign a player like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who, shockingly enough, was one of the top yards per catch receivers in 2021. You lose one of the top yard per catch receivers in Tyreek Hill, you bring one in with Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And now the Kansas City Chiefs are Super Bowl champions, and they have 11 draft picks in the 2023 NFL Draft, while the Buffalo Bills have 6. That's the game that I'm playing. We got to get as many draft picks as possible. Or, God willing, you go the other route, depending on what we're able to do in terms of Brandon Beane and its ability to restructure a contract, create as much salary cap space as possible to keep the players that you already have that you don't want to lose, like guys like Tremaine Edmonds, Jordan Poyer, and keep those guys for another season or more, and then acquire players that are win now, effective now players. And yes, I'll throw it out there. OBJ, we know we're going to hear it. I wouldn't mind it. So, we'll go to Ken Zintel. He says, I feel our window was 2 years ago. My biggest line that I could say in regards to Ken Zintel's point, going into this offseason, I don't know, quite possibly, I've said this to my dad, I've said this to so many people on other shows as well as friends, I don't know how the Buffalo Bills could be better in 2023 than what they were in 2022, 2021, and 2020. So, Ken Zintel, I'll one up your point in this sense. I agree with you that there was a window. The window has been the last 3 seasons, not the last 2. Maybe he means 2 years ago, including the last 3 seasons, because it's 2 years ago. Maybe that's 21, 22, 20, or I'm saying 20, 21, 22. That's what I'm saying in regards to that, Ken. I think you're onto something there as far as the Super Bowl window. If they don't make this team better based on building depth, based on acquiring win-now players and or accumulating more draft picks, this team won't be better in 2023. Will they be good enough to win the AFC East? Will they be good enough to win in the AFC wildcard round? I can't give you a straight answer to that question, or either one of those questions, because I don't know what the AFC East is going to look like. The AFC East could look wildly different in terms of the competition. Aaron Rodgers could be playing for the Jets. Derek Carr could be playing for the Jets. Aaron Rodgers could be playing for the Dolphins. Derek Carr could be playing for the Dolphins. I would not put it past the Miami Dolphins one bit to go out and get one of those 2 quarterbacks. Tua's on a rookie contract. He could sit a year. It makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. Kevin Johnston says, I think the Bills should make a big draft and make a statement for the future. I think that's what he's referring to there. I think the Bills should have a big draft to make a statement for the future. I don't know if that means trading up, Kevin. I'm not sure there. But this draft is not a good one. It's not a good one. I mean, you got your top 15 players, and then there's everybody else. That's what I see. That's how I feel. I mean, there's certain guys out there that I do feel like could make a nice jolt of an impact, especially on the offensive skill positions and realistically the defensive skill positions, defensive end, corner, safety. But you know what, and I know it, to all the Bills Mafia out there, if we go out into this draft and we draft another pass rusher in the first round, we're going to be pissed. The only way that this can go is if you hold down the fort with your first round draft choice and your second round draft choice. If you stand pat and you wait, which they've done before these last few years, you stay where you're normally picking, and wait for your pick to come. If you wait for your pick to come and you pick anything but a wide receiver or an offensive lineman, I don't know what to tell you. It has to be a wide receiver in the first round or an offensive lineman in the first round. It has to be a wide receiver in the second round or an offensive lineman in the second round. It can't be anything else, in my opinion. And if it is, we're not going to be a better team. I'm sorry, we're not. And I don't want to see us revert to our old ways. And what I mean by that is when the Buffalo Bills would lose a player like Paul Posluszny, they'd go out, or let's just say when they lose a player like, who was the guy that they had prior to Gilmore? I can't remember. There's a corner. Corner that they had prior to Gilmore that left. Then they draft Gilmore. Gilmore leaves. Then they draft Tre'Davious White. That's what I'm talking about. You can't just subtract and add, invest firsts in the same position. It just doesn't make much sense. Doesn't make much sense. Trying to think of the corner. Well, they had drafted Leotis McKelvin, who should not have been drafted in the first round, by at least in the top 15. And then he wasn't what they thought he was, obviously. And then they drafted Stephon Gilmore. And then Gilmore leaves on his rookie contract, and they draft Trey White. And there were years prior to that where they let Antoine Winfield go on off of his rookie contract. They let Nate Clemens go off of his rookie contract. They let a lot of guys go off of their rookie contracts. And I think that's what's about to happen with Tremaine Edmunds. I wrote about it in an article on the 24/7 Buff Fandemonium blog, and I really hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm not hitting the nail on the head in that regard. I don't want to be right in that regard because in a sense, I understand, salary cap just as well as anyone, and there's been no harsher critic of Edmunds than myself, I feel. But it sucks in terms of you develop a guy for 4 years and you let him leave. You let him leave as a free agent. That sucks. Really bad. So Ed Blasek says, understand the desire to grab playmakers. I won't click your comment, Ed, only because it's just so long and it'll take up my whole face on the screen. So, do we honestly know what we do or don't have for playmakers on this team already? Have to go O-line and get Josh protection and also help our running game. Need to be able to give Josh a real chance to look past his first target before he was running for his life. And like I said, Ed, if they went offensive lineman in the first round, I wouldn't be mad. If they went wide receiver in the first round, I wouldn't be mad. If they do go wide receiver in the first round and they go offensive line, as long as one of the first two picks is one of those two positions, in either order, I would not be upset with that. I would not be upset in any way, shape, or form. Now, in terms of your question, we don't know what they have in their playmakers. We don't. Well, we do, but we don't. We do in the sense that we know that we have Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs isn't getting any younger, folks. I'm not saying he's over the hill. I'm not saying he's past his prime. But he's reaching that midpoint in his career where we're going to start to see signs of a decline in the next couple years. We need another receiver to mitigate that gap that we're going to see in the next year or two from Diggs. It's certainly not Gabriel Davis. It can't just be Gabriel Davis. It can't be Gabriel Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, Cole Beasley, John Brown. This team needs wide receivers. This team needs playmakers. Josh Allen has not had a first-round drafted wide receiver since he's been drafted, outside of the fact that the Bills used a first-round pick to trade for Stephon Diggs. Worse than that, the Bills have not selected a wide receiver higher than the fourth round since 2017, and it was Zay Jones, and Josh Allen was drafted in 2018. So we are long overdue to find a receiver that's a quality receiver. You look at the teams around the AFC, if you want to call this a copycat, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, both drafted in the first and second round. Not the same year, but close. 1 year after the other. 1 year after the next, I should say. Okay. Joe Burrow and T. Higgins drafted in the same draft. Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, then the next year, first round draft choice, Jamar Chase. Okay? That's the difference. Okay, and yeah, they were picking in the bottom 5. Bottom 10, we'll just say. Top 10, bottom 10, however you want to look at it. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL those 2 years. Buffalo has been in the 20s or late 20s in terms of overall picks the last 3 or 4 years. And knowing what we do have in Diggs, being one of the elite receivers in the NFL, he's one of the best that the game has to offer. There's no debating that. Cole Beasley and John Brown, what do they bring to the table any longer? They're certainly not the receivers that they were those first few years in Buffalo. And they know that. That's why Cole Beasley hung up the cleats. That's why John Brown bounced around after he left Buffalo, because these guys are at the end of their careers. It's just a reality. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but at the same time, everybody's got peaks and valleys. Every career has the ups, the downs, and then the out, And I don't think these guys have it anymore. I don't think that I think Cole Beasley might have a little bit left, but not much. And I want guys personally on the team that can be young, fresh, hungry, and make the impact right away. I also want full usage and full transparency within our offense of having a tight end utilized. And we got a pretty damn good one, I feel, in Dawson Knox. I feel like he is better than average, especially at that position. There's only a few tight ends that I would say are elite. Travis Kelce, of course, is 1A with a capital 1 and a capital A. Yes, I said capital 1. As well, George Kittle, when he's healthy, is a freaking monster. But Dawson Knox, if he was in one of those offenses, he'd be just as good as one of those guys, I feel. An offense that's centered around getting the ball to your tight end. I think Ken Dorsey needs to do a much better job of that in year 2 than anything within the offense in terms of getting Dawson Knox touches. What type of receiver do you see the Bills taking? I think the receiver has to be no shorter than 6'2" and no lighter than no shorter than 6'2" and no lighter than 220 pounds. That's what I want. Get me a thick boy. Get me a thick boy out there at wideout. Somebody that's muscular, that can outmuscle and be physical at the line of scrimmage. I don't want a guy that's 5'8", $170. I don't want a guy that can't go up and get it. So one thing about Gabe Davis that I do like is that he can go up and get it. It's just intermediate routes. There's times where he drops the football. We thought after that Kansas City game that Gabe Davis was going to continue to just be that good. Well, it was a big game. That's all that was. It was a big game, and that's what Gabe Davis does. He's a big game player, but it's not consistent. He had that week in week 5 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and you say, holy crap, man, this kid is really good. But then 6 weeks go by and you're like, oh my God, I forgot Gabe Davis was even on this team. And I'm being a little bit facetious in saying that, but there's a big gap of productivity, or their lack thereof, and you have no idea how much that frustrated me. You have to leave no stone unturned this offseason. And in saying that, knowing full well that this team has salary cap problems, it sucks for me to say that they have to leave no stone unturned, and yet how can they go out and get who I'd like to see them get? How can they go out and make all these additions when they can't, as of now, due to the fact that they have salary cap problems, due to the fact that they're playing they're paying their best players a lot of money. Josh Allen's making a lot of money, rightfully so. Stephon Diggs is making a lot of money, rightfully so. Von Miller, he's making a lot of money. Yeah. Buyer's remorse for me. Unfortunately, I loved the move, but looking back on it, I don't. Looking back on it, I feel like had he stayed healthy, I wouldn't be saying this. I know that too. It just, I don't think it worked. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that I end up being wrong, and I hope Von Miller puts the icing on the final, the cherry on the top, the nail in the coffin when the Bills do win the Super Bowl, just like he did with the Rams and the Broncos. But I just 33 years old, 16 million a year for the next 2 years, and then he's gone. He's gonna play the next 2 years, retire, and that'll be it. Hopefully that guy can come back. Trey White, someone that I mentioned earlier, would not scoff at the idea of trading him. And I say that just because I don't think he's the same player he was a couple years ago from that ACL injury. And I think he knows it. I think the league knows it. I think the Bills know it. And he's a lot of money. What would that look like for a restructure and or trading him? Let's throw it all out there. If you're going to lose Jordan Poyer, you're going to have Micah Hyde out there without Poyer. Why have Hyde? If he's got 1 year left on his deal, why just get something for him while you can? Put him on a team that could use him. Even in a sense, we could obviously use him, but what I mean by that is put him on a team that gives him an opportunity to win because he did a lot for this team. And as well, I would say that you have a long thought process going into a negotiation with Ed Oliver as well, because I don't think Ed Oliver has really achieved his full potential in this rookie contract. This year was really his best season, and there were moments where he disappeared as well, especially against the Cincinnati Bengals and their third string offensive lineman. There's a lot of things to throw out there, guys, and we can't look at this team anymore and say, wow, this team is so good, this team's so this team's so that. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. I'm not saying you blow it up, but at the same time, I'm leaving no stone unturned in terms of making this team better quicker, rather than just keeping the same old pickers on it that we've had. And I say that as a walk the line reference. He wants to go out there and play with the same old pickers that he played with 30 years ago. Tennessee 2. That's how I feel like this team is. You know, they're going back out there with the same band. And it's not good enough. It's not good enough. The music is still the same. The same people are going to the show expecting a different song, and it's the same song played over and over and over again, and it has to be different. It has to change. And I've talked about this too. You know, there's one guy on this team that doesn't take the field as a player. But there's one guy on this team that I've given so much props to over the last 6-7 years. He's the sole reason as to why this team is as good as they've been these last few years, and it's Sean McDermott. But for everything that Sean McDermott has done for the Buffalo Bills, I wonder to myself, maybe Sean McDermott is only the guy that can take us as far as we are. Maybe he's not the guy that takes us to the Super Bowl. Maybe he's not the guy that helps us win a Super Bowl. Maybe he's not. And the only reason I say that is because you have coaches on this team, offensive coaches, defensive coaches, that Sean McDermott has allowed to operate the way that they have, for better or for worse. And after 6, 7 years of being the head coach of this franchise, leading us to the heights that he has in one season, breaking a playoff drought in his first season while dismantling the entire roster, if that didn't prove Sean McDermott's worthiness on that sideline as the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, if that didn't prove that thereafter that, Sean McDermott could puff his chest, call his own shots, rather than having this laissez-faire, metaphoric attitude toward victory or defeat, say, no, we are not losing like this ever again. Remember it. Feel this pain the entire offseason. Feel as sick deep down in your gut as you feel. And go out there next year and play like this is the last fucking chance that you ever have to step out on the field. That's what I would say to that team. Play like you're the last snap of your NFL career, every goddamn snap that you're out there. Because there's a guy in the press box that was watching that team in that game, AFC divisional round, Bills and Bengals, that damn sure wished that he could have been out there. But he might have played his last snap. And yet, you watch that game, you see a lack of fire, not just from the players. When Matt Milano said that these guys weren't in their right head, I think that went over everyone's head. Everyone. Bills Mafia, the teammates. I don't think he was just referring to the players. I think he was referring to the coaches. I think he was referring to the lack of urgency on your own home field to take that field against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are no better than you are. They're just hungrier than you are. How? How are they hungrier than you are when they didn't go through what you guys have gone through? They didn't go through the ringer, the trials and tribulations. Did the trials and tribulations that you guys went through weigh you guys down to the point that you were just so beat up over it mentally and physically that you just didn't have any gas in the tank? Maybe. Maybe that was it. Maybe that's what couldn't get them going against the Cincinnati Bengals. Or, as well as maybe, I could say, maybe it was the fact that when the Bills have lost games that they shouldn't have lost during this season, namely against the Minnesota Vikings, it's pick up your helmet, what's the right word? It's put your pads away. We're a better team than this. We'll learn from this. There are some guys on that team that are tired of feeling like they have to learn from a loss. They don't have to learn from a loss. They've been through it already. Year after year after year. There's some guys on the team that hold such a high standard for their own play that they expect the guys around them to hold that high of a standard for their play as well. Who do you guys think I'm referring to in saying that? A frustrated wide receiver. A frustrated, fiery competitor that I have zero problem with anything Stephon Diggs has said since he flipped out on Josh Allen in that game. I had no problem with it then, I have no problem with it now, and I never will. Because Stephon Diggs was the only guy with the cojones to say, this is not right. We're playing like we're not in this. What is going on? Why is this team playing like this? Why are we not showing up? Why are we underachieving in this moment? We're not playing with any fire. Where are we right now? What planet are we on? He's trying to get everyone's head in the game, and no one feels the need to react. No one's willing to step up. No one's willing to take the challenge. And guys like that are tired of walking off the field after a loss like that and saying, or hearing their coach say, we're going to learn from this. We're not where we want to be yet. We know we have a lot of work to do. We have a long way to go. No. We're better than this. We need to start acting like it. Going into games. And dare I say it, the one facet of Sean McDermott will never have is the same facet that Rex Ryan actually had. Rex Ryan, for all the facets that he didn't have, are all the facets that Sean McDermott has, I should say. And what I mean by that is Sean McDermott does have that methodical professionalism, that methodical integrity as an NFL head coach, that you do see his process and you can rally around it, you can understand it, you can feel like, okay, we're working towards something here. He's a building blocks head coach. And that's okay when you're in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. But when you get to year 5, year 6, 7, you're making the playoffs, you're making an AFC title game, the expectations are higher. The building block verbiage, it's old. It doesn't translate anymore for me. It doesn't translate anymore for the guys that are their best players, that want to win. You need a coach in that organization with a little bit of a fiery swagger. And I understand it's not going to be Sean McDermott. It never will be Sean McDermott. Clearly, it never will be. It hasn't been to date. But could it be Ken Dorsey, who plays with a little bit more fire as an offensive coordinator? We know who it's not going to be. As much as it's not going to be Sean McDermott, it won't be Sean McDermott's best pen pal during the offseason, Leslie Frazier, who Sean McDermott feels the need to give a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth chance for God knows why. Total defense, that defense, week in, week out, top 5. Total defense. Statistically, top 5. Every single regular season. But when the going gets tough and you're in the playoffs, you're barely scraping by Skylar Thompson, who was 2 Tyreek Hill drops away from making it a game, and 1 Jalen Waddle drop away from making it a game. Then you go to host the Cincinnati Bengals, the form and fashion in which in the regular season game prior to the tragic accident with Damar Hamlin, where Joe Burrow's just nickel and diming all the way down the field en route to a 7-3, what was a 7-3 standstill due to the Hamlin situation. The same way the Bengals attacked the Bills in that game in the regular season, you fast forward to the playoffs, it looked like the same game. Looked like the same drive. That first drive from Cincinnati, the same drive. And Leslie Frazier was standing there on the sideline looking like he was half awake. I can't stand it. And I honestly, the fact that he has not been fired yet, to me, is just unfathomable. I don't understand it. And the fact that more people aren't pounding that drum, to me, is egregious. And I don't want to hear anything in regards to what I've heard. That, okay, and I'm gonna phrase this as best as I can. I know, and I've talked about this on my show a lot. I know that there is still a massive problem in the National Football League with African American head coaches or lack thereof, as well as African American coaches, or lack thereof, I should say. Leslie Frazier's not a head coach. Leslie Frazier is not a top-flight defensive coordinator in the National Football League anymore. Because the personnel that the Bills have does not fit this defense anymore. Because this defense is being whittled down, losing players left and right. Jordan Poyer, Edmonds could be gone. Trey White is nowhere near what he once was. He's not. So, what are we doing here? Well, it's McDermott's 4-2-5. Well, McDermott needs to say to himself, this team wants to win. The city wants the team to win. We gotta win. We need to win. We need to do whatever it takes to win. And if it means changing up my defense a little bit, if it means me being more fiery and holding more people more accountable verbally and getting in someone's face. All it takes for one coach to get the attention of all the guys around him. He might not even have to go and call out the player that did something wrong. But if he holds the guy accountable that everyone on the team sees as the guy, then everyone else is on pins and needles saying, holy moly, he just called that guy out? If he's calling that guy out, I better get on my shit. I better be on my P's and Q's. But Sean McDermott has not done that. And I know he has not done that because I've seen the same result 3 seasons in a row. 3 seasons in a row I've seen the Buffalo Bills underachieve when it matters the most. Regular season, losing to teams they shouldn't lose to. Playoffs, playing way too close. Where is the fire? Where is the passion? Where is the morale boost? There's times where I've seen it from McDermott. These post-game locker discussions where he's talking to the team after a big win. You see the fire for a little bit, but it's not consistent. This guy's a former wrestler. I'm a former wrestler. I understand what it feels like to feel like your back is literally against the wall and you got no one but yourself out there to save you. Okay? And when you're in that moment, the only thing that you can think about is, how do I get out of this? How do I rise above? Where is it inside me that I have to dig deep? What can I pull out of myself? What do I have left to pull out of myself to put myself on the right side of this situation? And the fact that Sean McDermott just doesn't really seem to understand that anymore, or we don't see that, it's just, I don't feel the same vibe around the team that I did when McDermott was in his second training camp, third training camp. Maybe as the team reverts back to getting a little younger with the departure of a few players, maybe that intensity from Sean McDermott will return. I hope so. Because if he's going to keep this staff together as he has, Leslie Frazier and Ken Dorsey mainly are sticking around, mainly Leslie Frazier. Ken Dorsey's heading into his second year. I thought he did some really nice things during the regular season. I liked some of the flair that he brought to the offense, weeks 1 through 9 especially. But if Leslie Frazier is going to be that D coordinator again, fine. We know Sean McDermott, write some letters in the offseason saying, how's it going, Leslie? Let's be pen pals, all that stuff. But let's at least approach the season a little bit differently. Let's at least have a fire and intensity, because the window is closing. The window might have already closed for all we know. It might have already closed. It's only up to us as, and I say us not as fans, but us as a team, organization, the Buffalo Bills, it's only up to them to push it back open. And they're not going to do that by looking at, oh, this other team did this, this, and that. Well, good for them. Good for them. What are we going to do? How are we going to combat that? We're not going to combat anything by doing the same exact thing. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. We're going to try to do something that somebody else has already done and expecting us to achieve a different result, which would be the Super Bowl. That's not the way to go. It's not the way to go. It's going to be a very interesting offseason. I appreciate the comments. Ken Zintel says, love the honesty. Great show. I feel everything I feel you nailed. And good or bad, Sean McDermott's always clapping. That, to me, would frustrate the hell out of me after a while. That would frustrate me a great deal. And I think Stephon Diggs is frustrated. I think he's very, very disappointed, and I think that he should be. I'm disappointed. You're disappointed. And I'm not ready to open up the Buffalo News and read preview articles. I'm not ready to be sold false hope again in regards to players that they've drafted. I'm not ready to tell myself once again that this is a year that they could win the Super Bowl. This year for me, more than any other in my entire life, I thought that this team was going to go all the way. I really did. So much so that I thought maybe they'd win it this year and next year. And now I have no idea what's going to happen. I can't say with a straight face what is going to happen is going to be impactful and positive. I mean, obviously I'm going to hope. I have to have hope. Without hope, there's nothing. But I'm not going to read these articles that provide me false hope on these players. I'm going to believe it when I see it. I'm going to believe it when I see it. I'm not going to prop up any of these players any more than I already have, because clearly they were not up to snuff. And not even Josh Allen was up to snuff. And I'm going to say that, because the last throw that Josh Allen made, or attempted, was an interception. And it was god-awful. Okay? And I'm not trying to sound overly critical here. There were a lot of good moments this season, but this offseason is as crucial as any for the Buffalo Bills. They have to get it done in terms of making this team better, because if they don't, they're going to be far worse than what they were in 2022, 2021, and in 2020. You talk about those 3 years, you talk about 13 seconds. Dare I say it? I think 13 seconds is living rent-free in the head of Sean McDermott, Josh Allen, Leslie Frazier, especially. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back. You guys know it. See you next week.